Hey guys, Pastor Alex here. I just want to take a second and from the bottom of my heart say thank you so much for tuning in to what's happening here at Overflow Church. Hope the message today pushes you, blesses you, and encourages you. Enjoy.
What is going on? Overflow? Nope. Y'all just like 9 a.m. All y'all, every one of y'all. All right, try one more time. Good job, Justin. I love you. How we doing, Overflow Church? Like 5 people when they stayed up till 3 a.m. They got an excuse. The rest of y'all, y'all don't have one as far as I'm concerned. So obviously, I am so pumped to be here, to bring a word that God has deposited in me this week, the past few weeks actually. And I always hold this position in honor. I'm always humbled by it. Anytime Pastor Alex asks me to speak, it's a very humbling thing for me. It's a very specific thing. And I always am just humbled by it every time. And so as they're making their way home and they're watching online this morning, I love you, Pastor. I'm glad you and your wife are coming home. Can't wait to see you guys. They've been gone for like 2 weeks. I need to do that sometime, a 2-week vacation. I need to try that out. But I'm totally honored to be here. My name is Josh Crawford. We do a lot of stuff here. It doesn't matter about titles. I'm not big into that anyway, but have a hodgepodge of jobs, many things that we do behind the scenes here. I'm a part of that. I'm one of the small pieces of the puzzle that planted this church almost 6 years ago. That's wild. So wild. Actually, Jessica this morning talked about she's been coming for 5 years. She actually posted this morning. And that's really, really cool, man, when people post about how long they've been coming, the impact this place has made. But it's really cool to be a part of something really special. And we started in a living room with just a few folks, and then it grew really, really quick. And then here we are today where you get to be a part of a room full of people. And it's really just a humbling experience to see all you guys in this room coming before we started. So God's good and he's faithful, and that's amazing. Now, I want to say this is very important. I am the husband to Alicia Crawford. I say that because she's a very special lady. Now, there's so many qualities. She's a way better leader than I am. She's so giving. She sacrifices everything for so many different people. She'll do anything for anybody. If you've ever met her, you just love her. Like, you can't help it. But she's the reason I'm here because she's the one that invited me to church to begin with. So I always want to honor her because her invite led me here. And it leads me to this spot right now, and it's all because of my wife. And so, super thankful for her. And I'm thankful and grateful that she's my wife because she's my best friend. She pushes me past my comfort zone. She challenges my opinions and my preferences and everything else that I throw at her. And I need that. And so God putting her in my life and just the things that we've been able to do and experience together as a couple has been amazing. I'm also the father to 3 awesome kids, Dylan, Ava, and Zion. Dylan's in the room this morning. Ava's watching online. I love all 3 of you so much. I have so many prayers for you that I pray every day will be answered. I pray for all 3 of my kids that no matter what happens now, in the future, they will find their role, find their purpose, and bring people to God's kingdom. Now, before we get started today, I want to honor this guy right here, youth pastor, Josiah Cobb. So, now, I want to honor you because I just love your heart for God, dude. I'm going to be real honest. I just love that you go after God in a way that's really special, and you're obedient to it. And I wish I would have had a quarter of what you have at your age. I really do, because I missed out on a lot. And seeing you just follow his will and his plan for your life. And I love when you come in and you ask questions and you want to know more about God, and you're just like, you're so transparent and vulnerable, and that means a lot to me. And I just want to honor you in that way because I'm glad you're our youth pastor, and I'm glad you're leading our kids, and you're going to do so many things, man, that are just going to be miraculous. But where we are right now, I look up to you, and I'm thankful for you. Now, he preached his first sermon last week. He did an incredible job. So good, so good. Now, We got all kinds of comments on Facebook. It got shared everywhere. Everybody was loving it. Miss Gina Sloan was watching in her car, and she actually was talking about, hey, it was such a great sermon. I watched it all the way to Nashville. That's a 2-hour drive. It was a 2-hour sermon. And that's okay, man. Hey, like, Pastor Alex was so engaged. He was under the umbrella except for his feet, and he watched all 7 hours of church that day and burned his feet to crispy fried chicken. But hey, man, he was engaged. He was engaged. He was in. But I'm just kidding with you. I love you. I'm thankful for you. And honored to serve with you, dude. Grandpa. He always calls me Grandpa. I'm the old guy in this church. I don't know how that works. But I'm kind of the old guy when it comes to like our team and our staff. And I take that. I didn't say this at 9 because nobody called me Grandpa, but you weren't here. And I take it because I know in my heart, most of these kids can't hang with me anyway. Like, y'all want to go run 10 miles together? We can go do that, if y'all want to. So I know they can't hang with me. So I take it as a compliment. I'll take Grandpa any day of the week. So today, y'all ready? Y'all ready? Okay, let's get it, dude. Sorry, y'all don't know that guy. He's on TikTok and Instagram. He cooks really good food. I think he drinks a lot. But anyway, let's read. Let's read it. Matthew 26, 36 through 46. It'll be on the screen. If you got your Bible, turn there. Got your phone, go to Matthew 26, 36 through 46. We're going to get into this story about Jesus in the garden. It says, then Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to his disciples, sit here while I go over there and pray. And taking with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, my soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me. And going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, saying, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. And he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter, so could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Again, for the second time, he went away and prayed, my Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done. Again, he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the 3rd time, saying the same words again. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, sleep and take your rest later on. See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. Now, I'm going to set this up for you. I believe everyone in this room has a purpose. I believe most of us know what that purpose is. And I think that comes from the Holy Spirit. I think that comes from Scripture telling us we have a purpose. I think you know that. I don't think that's the struggle. I think the struggle is having the courage and the faith to embrace what God's called us to do and to really live out that purpose. That's the struggle. And this is where the garden of potential comes in. And that's what the message will be called today, the garden of potential. We're in the garden with Jesus. And potential can go one of 2 ways. We can choose to follow that purpose in our life and live out what God's called us to do, or we can choose not to. And sometimes they're big choices. I remember probably 7 years ago, when God was like, this is what I want you to do next. I want you to plant a church. And I was like, man, that's a terrible idea, God. I always say that, and y'all probably think I'm kidding. I told God that. It's a terrible, no good, whatever idea, whatever that's from. I don't even know what I'm talking about right now. It's a terrible idea. But then I kind of got accustomed to it. Everybody, our whole group was like, no, it's not a good idea. We don't need to plant a church. We're already going to a church. And then God's like, I want you to plant a church in McKinsey. And I was like, that's going to go over super well. We go to church in McKinsey, and you're asking us to plant a church 3.5 miles down the road. Fantastic. But that's God. See, God's going to ask you to do things that are bold. He's going to ask you to do things that are going to be risky. That's God. God is the God of the bold ask and, the risky things he's wanting you to do. Now, we can either walk in purpose or we can fall into temptation. In every garden, there's temptation, right? Every garden in our life, every garden that we face, there's going to be temptation. We saw it here. Jesus is telling his disciples to pray and not fall into temptation. Adam and Eve had the same problem in the garden. There was temptation. Now, you have an opportunity to walk in your purpose, or these temptations come up. And what are those? Maybe it's your preference. It wasn't Jesus' preference to die. It wasn't Jesus' preference. He sat there and said it. If this can pass, I would rather it do so. But see, we don't read the Bible that way. We read the Bible already knowing the end, which makes it kind of a cute children's story. We read it like we're 10 years old, like, oh, Jesus has decided to die for us. What a nice guy. And that's how we read it. That's not what happens here. He has to make a choice. If he decides, no, I'm not going to do this, then we know Jesus is what? He's the guy that could have saved the world. That's what we would have known Jesus as. Yeah, there was this guy, Jesus. He came, he did some miracles, some really cool stuff, and he got down to the nitty gritty. And then he was like, nah, I'm checking out. Can't do that. But we don't know him as that. We know him as the Savior of the world. Also, there's our expectations of our purpose. We have this expectation of what God's calling us to do. And we always think it's like really super cool and like super big. Like, God's calling me to start a podcast, or God wants me to speak in front of thousands of people. Like, that's what we do. You know what I mean? We like, God's asking me to do something really grand and big, make me look great. But what about God asking you to endure some pain along the way, endure some suffering? And we don't take that into consideration when we never count the cost. Like, we jump in ministry all the time. We don't count the cost of what's to come. And then like it hits us in the face and we're like, oh, I'm done with that. You see it all the time in ministry. You see it all the time in churches. You see it all the time in our culture. And Jesus makes this the biggest impact in the entire world, and he had to suffer through the entire process. Now, I really feel like he modeled that for us, right? Like, he modeled what it looks like to really suffer. What he did should encourage us, inspire us, and let us know that we can actually live this thing out. Not your life. I'm not talking about just life. I'm not talking about existing. I'm talking about live out your purpose. Because I want everybody in this room to know, like, everybody in this room has a purpose. I know most of you know what it is because you feel it. You know what God's telling you. Some of you have no idea, but you do. You're not here on accident. Now, I hear it all the time in church, you know, being a pastor, being at church all the time, people are like, man, what's my purpose? I want to know what my purpose is. And I feel like most of the time people do know, but somewhere along the way, they just find out it's going to be way too inconvenient, right? It's going to get in the way of my life and what I'm doing. And I'm just not ready to do that. And the fact is, you probably won't be ever. You probably will just continue to say that same excuse the rest of your life. Now, another thing that we struggle with is our past. We disqualify ourselves all the time because we're not good enough or we made too many mistakes. If you really knew me, if you knew my heart, my thoughts, everything that goes on inside of me, everything I've done, every person I've hurt, every mistake I've made, everything that I've ever done in my lifetime, you would not listen to a word I had to say at this moment. You would not be able to. Because my past is pretty shady. I've done a lot of crazy stuff and I've hurt a lot of people and I've done a lot of bad things, none of it which I am proud of. But it's still there. And so when God asked me to do stuff, I'm like, God, I can't do that. I can't stand up here. Standing up here literally sometimes gives me anxiety because I think like my past starts creeping in. I'm like, you don't have any right to stand up there and tell anybody to do anything because of what you've done. Like, you don't have any right. And so I have to battle those thoughts. Now, it's really crazy because when I battle these thoughts, I'm always talking to God, and I'm very myself when I talk to God. Like when I pray to God, I don't even call it praying. Like I'm talking to my dad. That's what I do. I'm having a conversation. And sometimes I get really colorful and animated because I'm a very passionate person. And I'll be talking to God and I'll be like, I don't know why I said a cuss word just then. I'm really sorry. Like, and I'm just talking and I'm just telling God, like, I love you, but like this is going on and this sucks, this is happening. And I am having a genuine conversation with God. That's how I talk to my dad. That's how I talk to my father. So anytime God asks me to do something and I get in this real tight moment where I'm like, I'm not ready to do that yet, or it's gonna be way too hard, or it's gonna cause way too much inconvenience for me, or I'm not good enough. Like, and God's like, no, you are. This is what I call you all the time. You are my son. And then I go to this moment in the garden. It's really one of my favorite scriptures of the entire Bible because it's so powerful, because it's all about a choice that Jesus had to make. I think about it all the time. It's such a powerful thing for me because we're faced with decisions every day, and we're faced with decisions, like I said, whether they're big or small. And Jesus said yes. And so I'll think about that moment. I'll be like, all right, you got it. You got my yes. When I go back to that moment, I'm like, you're right. Like I can do this. With your help, I can do anything. And but the first thing, we talked about the temptations in our life, the things that keep us from our purpose. The first thing I want to talk about today is our past. That's it, the first thing. Now, I get it. Our past is big, right? We feel like our future is going to be just like our past. We're going to make the same mistakes. We're not going to be able to do this thing, which keeps us from living out our purpose. We put so much value into what people label us as. We put so much value into other people's opinions. It's just how we're wired. And then your past gets heavy. Emmett talked about this past week in our Overflow Church group about our past and how much his past weighed on him for so long. And I think all of us can feel that weight, right? We can all feel that weight. Now, your past gets heavy, and most of us just want to like shed it off and just move on and just like forget about it, right? And we can do that for maybe like a few days or a few hours or a few weeks or a few months, whatever. But then it's going to hit us again. It's always going to come back. Now, when the weight gets really overwhelming, I think about this, and I'm going to tell wherever Jesse Turner is right now, this is actually something we do in the gym. He told me to tell him that because he didn't know what I was talking about earlier. So it's called a farmer carry. Now, you do a farmer carry, you have to lift the weight, pick it up, and I hate doing these. These are ridiculous. But it's a lot of weight, and you walk with it. You just walk. You're taking a walk. You got all this weight. Now, if you have a certain distance, you've got to walk and carry all this weight. What do? You start walking really fast. I have to get to my destination and drop this weight before I die. So that's the whole goal, is to get to the stopping point so you can just stop. Now, when you do that, most of the time, you're going to stop and just quit and give up, right? When you finally dump all the weight off, you just quit and give up. So you don't really get rid of the weight. You're sitting like right beside it. Doesn't go anywhere. You're just sitting right with it. And then you get back up and you go, I got some more energy. Pick it back up and keep on walking. And that's what we do with our past. We just keep walking with it. And when you get down here, it's still in the same story. I go to a different book real quick. Luke 22:45. And it says, at last, he stood up again and returned to the disciples, only to find them asleep, exhausted from grief. I wanted to read it in this context because in the previous verses that we read, it seemed like they were just tired. Jesus had them out on the boat too long, or they'd just been, witnessing to people all day. And the disciples, they were just kind of tired, man. We just had a long day. That's not why they were tired. They were tired because the person that they have given up their entire life for. Remember, these guys quit all their jobs, moved away from family, did all this crazy stuff, took a lot of risk, made some really, really bold decisions. Now they're at the point where their leader, the guy they've been following, is fixing to be killed. That's a heavy moment. And not only that, they don't even know if they're going to be killed or not. They have no idea. But here they are. And we get that way in life. When depression hits, when things hit really, really hard, and we can't move anymore. We just want to go to sleep. I've been there in the last year, I promise. I've had days where I get up and I'm like, man, it just ain't worth it. Because things in life they wear you out. And then your past wears you out. There's just so many things around you that make you tired and that make you just want to quit. And it's not just the pain from our past that makes us feel that way. There's also the way we grew up, right? The way we grew up. We have the people in our lives, parents, grandparents, mentors, leaders that we had in our life, classmates, friends, you name it, whatever, that shaped and molded us and influenced us in some way. And some of those things we want to still emulate and do. Some of those things, every time we see them, they trouble us, and we run as far away as we can from that, because I remember when that happened to me a long time ago. I want nothing to do with it. Now, I grew up in a home where I went to church every single week. Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night. That's what we did. That was the home I grew up in. My dad was a youth pastor, loved God, loved people, and I saw my parents get healed in church. I saw them get hurt in church. I saw them get pushed forward. I saw them get pushed out. I have seen every angle of what it's like to grow up in a church in my home. My parents are super consistent, and I brag on them because they instilled that in me, in being consistent. And, my dad, the way I grew up, I watched him do things as a youth pastor that I still take with me today. My dad had zero fear, zero. My dad would walk into any situation and he would never be afraid. I've never seen that man be afraid in his life in a situation. When he would go and witness to people, he would take a bus and he'd pick up whatever kid he could find to go to church. He did not care. He got in a lot of trouble at churches. They're like, why are you bringing all them rowdy kids in here? My dad did not care. He loved those kids and he went after those kids. And my mom was a prayer. She prayed, she read her Bible every single day. She prayed for people, took care of people. That's how she always was. And that was a huge influence on me as a kid. And I saw all these things in church. And then I want to say this really, really quick. It's an intentional stop. We give church a hard time, like it's people. We forget sometimes the church is people. Now, maybe you came here from another church and you're like, man, I love Overflow, it's great. And I'm glad you do. I love what we do here. It's an amazing honor to get to do this with you. And I know God's gonna change a lot of lives with his church. And I'm excited for you. But if you came through those doors from another church because you got hurt and you don't think you'll ever get hurt here, you're wrong. There are people in McKinsey, there are people outside of McKinsey who will tell you, I did not go to church because of Josh Crawford. That's a true statement. That's not like something to add to the message. That's just true. They will tell you, I've heard it, I've had it said to my face before, I will never go to another church because of you. People get hurt. It's not intentional. Sometimes it is. But the same church you're talking about, and I'm just saying that because I don't want you to come in here and like badmouth the place you came from, because that's not true. That's just your hurt. And that's where that's coming from. And it's real easy to do. It's real easy to go to the next destination and go, well, this is where I'm at. I got hurt at this other place and I can't stand any of those people. You can. They're people too. There's people in those churches that love Jesus just like we do, that pray and read their Bible and go after people. And that's what they do. And we gotta be real careful sometimes of how we address that. You can say, hey, I got hurt and God's helping me get through it. And I'm gonna go here now. And that's okay. But sometimes we really take it out on the church. I did the same thing because after a while, like going to church, I saw, the hypocrisy a little bit, right? I saw the hypocrisy in church. I saw the indifference. You know why I saw it? Because that's who I was. I was a hypocrite. And the better I got at it, the more I saw it. As I put myself in places where some of these other people were going, I was like, man, you just got drunk last weekend. You in church. But so did I. Like, who am I talking to? But that's what we do. We become indifferent and we become the hypocrite, and then we start calling everybody else out on it. And that's what we do. And I want to tell you why we do that. Because your past, everything that happens in your past, whether it's the pain from your past, the influence in your past, it creates your preferences, okay? Your past creates your preferences. And that's the next thing on the list. And we got preferences, don't we? No, don't you dare. There will not be 3 amens to that. We all have preferences, don't we? Everybody else in this room is lying, promise. My wife, is your hand up? Okay, everybody's got their hand up. We've all got preferences. I get it, you're shy. You still lied. It's okay. You can get forgiveness later. But listen, we've all got preferences. And I'm not saying your preferences don't matter. I'm just saying they usually don't matter to anybody else but you and the few people that have the same preference, right? Now, last year was a wild year. I mean, I know, you know what's fixing to come out of my mouth. You know what we're fixing to talk about. But I know we don't want to talk about it anymore. I know everybody's just trying to move on from it, right? We're trying to move on from our past. But last year happened. It did. And I noticed last year, myself included, our preferences got really, really loud. We had the pandemic. We had all the racial unrest, all the tension. We had the election. We had all those things. And everybody's preference was just, magnified, times 20. We were on like Spinal Tap level volume. I mean, it was insane. I'm glad people got that joke. That's good. Nobody laughed at 9. Praise God. So anyway, our preferences got super loud. And I noticed there's another element to our preferences when they start getting really, really loud. It's because we're unsure of what's going on around us. And we get scared, right? We get a little bit afraid. And man, we just start telling everybody, well, you're wrong and you're wrong. It's your fault. Y'all suck. I don't want anything to do with y'all anymore. And that's what we do. That's how we treat people. That's our preferences. And that's where they come from. So last year, I decided I was going to save the world and start a podcast. I said, this would be a great idea. It's such a stupid idea. Anyway, I went to pastor and I was like, man, I have this great idea. I was like, spit out the vision for it. I was like, dude, we're going to start a podcast and we're going to give pastors this avenue and this vehicle to like talk about stuff that we don't normally get to talk about. We're going to be able to have honest conversations with just pastors. It's going to be great. And which would have been great if my heart would have been in the right place, but it wasn't. So we go through this podcast and we talk about COVID, we talk about the election, we talk about racism where we live. And I want you to understand something. I don't talk about racism from a national standpoint, okay? I talk about racism because I see it in my own community, okay? That's why I talk about it, and that's why it's important, okay? So I don't just get on the bandwagon and talk about racism because it's a national issue. It's an issue where I live because I hear conversations all the time of things that people should never say out loud, and they do. So anyway, that's why we talked about it. Now, we talk about all these things. We started getting tons of phone calls. I mean, like, oh, I can't believe it. I mean, like, we got so many phone calls. And people quit the church over it. I mean, it was a train wreck. I mean, just one thing after another. It was like, could not have been a more worse decision. Anyway, so we quit doing it mainly because we just got kind of overwhelmed with like the production of it. Like when you do a podcast, you got to have the audio, the video, you have to edit everything. You have to have the guests come in, do the thing. You got to set up, tear down, go through that whole entire process. And when you're doing everything else for the church, like it just took a lot of time. So we just quit doing it. So February of this year, I started thinking about it again. I was like, man, we haven't done a podcast in a really, really long time. And Holy Spirit started talking to me about that. And he said, Josh, I don't really feel like I called you to start a podcast. I really feel like I called you to help plant a church and love people and be a bridge at times when you need to be, and to do the things I need you to do to help build my church and to live out your purpose with me. I don't really think I ever asked you to start a podcast. He goes, but I think you started a podcast because you were frustrated with other people. You would let them know in a loud way what you thought and what your opinion was. And I was like, touche. So that's my relationship with God. Lots of touche moments where God corrects me and helps me understand how many preferences I have. And while we all have preferences on all those subjects, and we do, we also have a lot of preferences in the room, in these four walls, in the church. And I know the church is not just a building, I know, but we do meet together. We do worship together. We do this thing together in this room. There's a bunch of people in this room. We can all agree we are in a room right now. But we all have preferences in here. Now, when we planted our church, the biggest thing for me in the beginning was I always looked at it from just my experience, and I was like, it's easy to look here, and you got Bob. And we both believe the same thing about God. We both have the same ideals, the same belief system, and we're worshiping together. And that's good, right? That's easy money. We can do that all day. But the tension in the room is when you stand beside someone who's not like you. And their beliefs really get all over yours a little bit. And you're like, man, I don't know about that guy. Where's Bob? Like, Bob is really cool, and this guy is a weirdo. That's what we do. Like, we do that. But you know what tension helps you do, right? It helps you grow. We say, I don't want to be complacent. I live my life in fear of being complacent. I never want to be complacent. I don't want to just wake up and exist. I want to have a purpose. I want to live it out. I'm going to give God my every breath I've got until I am gone. And that's my goal. I spent a long time doing it my way. I'm going to do it his way until it's over. So preferences in worship, I don't know, they're pretty loud too. And I used to be really hard on how I grew up. I used to badmouth like the kind of church I went to. I was like, you know what, like that church is irrelevant now. It's ineffective because people don't care as much and they care more about their religion and all this other stuff. And they don't care about people. And I was really hard on the church. And God has really spoken to me about that lately because while it's great that we can all come in here and be different together and worship God together, those are still people. And I'm still hating on people, on a group of people. I'm not hating on a building. I'm hating on some people. Now, I want you to understand that because the world, when we post stuff on Facebook, we share stuff on Facebook, and I know people think we're crazy, but if you go down to Dollar General down here, or maybe you're working there, you're working the cashier or whatever, and you're just standing there, somebody comes up to you and they go, you know, that old Stephen Furtick guy, he's a heretic. Or that church they're crazy. And this guy doesn't know who you're talking about. It's the same way on social media. Like when you make a post and like you're slamming somebody else for what they believe, you got friends that don't know who Jesus are and they're like, who's that guy? Why do you hate that guy so much? Like, what did he do? Oh, he's different. Oh, because that's what we do. We hate on people. And the world sees that. The world sees all our anger. And it's funny because 20 years ago, and I'm sure Lifeway gave all these shirts somewhere in Haiti. They probably don't sell them anymore, but you remember the really cliche quote? It was like, and we still say it today when we're introducing someone to Jesus, we'll go, it's not about the religion, man. It's about the relationship. Yeah, you know, we say that all the time. We love it. It's like the favorite thing. Well, it's not about religion. It's about relationship. But wait till somebody else's relationship doesn't look like yours. And then it's like, no, wait, it's about the religion, man, my religion. It's like, that's what we do to people. We like when they get saved and they find Jesus and then we go, oh, but you're not like me. Oh, well, that's unfortunate. You can't be a robot. So I'm just not gonna like you. And that's what we do. We discard people for that. And it's across the board. There is no like denomination that's got it all together. And it's both sides. It's everywhere. Everybody does it. So I don't want you to think like, yeah, they do that to me all the time. You're the same way. So don't be better. Don't act like you're better. Now, all the things from our past, they create our preferences. And those preferences are just a collection of good things, of bad things, of people that have spoken to our lives that we trusted. Those are all the things. And that's why we're so passionate about them. Because they're a part of our DNA. They're a part of who we are. And it's okay to be passionate about them. I'm not saying there's anything really wrong with your preferences. They're just not your purpose. And I want you to write this down. There's gonna be two things you're gonna write down today that I think are important. And this is one of them. And I want you to hear me when I say it. If you can't set aside your preferences for the people that you're called to love, you lose. Period. That sentence is very simple. If you refuse to put aside your preferences for the people that you're called to love, you lose. If I do that, I lose. If I refuse to put aside my preferences for the people in this room, I lose. And you know, I can imagine when Jesus was in the garden and he's praying, I'm sure it's not his preference to be betrayed, tortured, and killed for a bunch of people that want him dead anyway. But he did it. He said, you know what, God, this ain't my preference, but I'm gonna trust you and I'm gonna do it. And he did it. He put aside all his preferences and obeyed his Father. And that's important because your past, now we have preferences, and they combine to create the big monster, our expectations of what's to come. Your past and your preference combines in itself to create our expectations. Now, our experiences and our preferences, they do create an expectation from God, from ourselves, from other people. And I feel like we always think they're great, right? We're always looking ahead at the greater things in life and the things on down the road. And it's a part of our culture. It really is. It's who we are. But I think God is trying to show us something else. And not just the greatness. It's why we love sports. Like if we're real serious, it's why we love sports. Because sports, you can measure wins and losses. Super easy to do. You either win or lose, right? It's easy, one or the other. Following Jesus is not like that at all. Following Jesus can feel like 10 years I have been losing and you've been winning. It's all about perspective when you follow Jesus. And God shows you these things way on down the road. And you're like, man, I didn't even know that. Like, I thought that was a terrible season in my life, but look what God brought out of it, because it's always for our good, right? So that's something we don't think about. We just think we have to win or lose. And that's going to play on here in just a little bit. But I want you to write this last point down. This is a big one. We look, and I'll let you know when I get there. But we have this thing about greatness in our country and in our culture where we feel like, I think sometimes it's kind of an insecurity almost. I know it's a campaign slogan. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about how enamored we are with the word. Because I really feel like we're all at a point in our life where we're like, if he would just make it a little better, if we can just find a guy to make it a little better, that'd be great, right? Just a little, because I'm struggling. But man, things around me are different. I don't agree with what's going on. And then like, I just need somebody to make it a little better, and that'd be great. We're really settling is what we're doing, but we think we're being great. Now, this is the point, and I want you to write this down, and I want you to remember it for the rest of your life. Our expectation of greatness limits our experience with God's goodness. Our expectation of greatness limits our experience with God's goodness. Let's talk about good really, really quick. I looked up several different definitions of good, biblical terms, and let me find them really quick. Holy, kind, sufficient, not blemished, fair, honorable, pure, righteous. That's what he wants from. That's what he wants for us, is goodness. He just wants us to be good. And I'm not saying this, I'm not a political person, so I don't want you to take it this way. It's just something I think about because I know we're really passionate about it. What if we stop trying to make America great and just let God make it good? Just let him make it good. You know, wouldn't that be great if you just be good? Now, when Jesus arrived on the scene, we find two populations in similar situations, because we're kind of the same way. I can see it kind of how it comes. Jesus comes, the Jewish people are wanting a warrior to slay and kill the Roman Empire, their enemy. They want this guy to come in and wreak violence across all the land and get rid of this thing that's been holding them back. They want to be number one again, right? They want to be great. They want to be number one. Number one. We've been held back for so long with these Romans. The Son of God's here. He's going to set it straight. And Jesus came and said, I'm going to teach you how to love your enemy. They wanted Jesus to point out the faults of the Roman Empire and all the people they hated. And Jesus held up a mirror and said, hey, bro, look. Jesus does that to me all the time because I'm just as judgmental as anybody else in here. I can do it, and I do. I struggle with it sometimes. That's some of that childhood stuff I have to put back. I'll tell you a little story. There was a person that came to an event we had in town one time. And this is a very just transparent story. This person came to an event and they weren't dressed really how I thought they should be. I was like, that's kind of inappropriate. And I said something to another person. I was like, man, that's really inappropriate. I don't know why you wear that in public. The next day, that person was in our church. A month later, that person got baptized. And God was like, see, Josh, in spite of you, I can still move. You know? Isn't that good? Because we know who we are. Like we know our heart. We know who we are. We're all the same. And Jesus comes to show us how to love our enemy and how to look at ourselves instead of everyone else. And it got him right here. It got him in the garden because they're going to kill him. And let's go to verse 39 really quick. It says he went on a little farther and bowed with his face to the ground, praying, my Father, if it's possible, let this cup of suffering be taken away from me. Yeah, I want your will to be done, not mine. Then in verse 42, he goes, my Father, if this cup cannot be taken away unless I drink it, your will be done. Even though he struggles, each time he tells his Father, it's your will. And I read this and something popped in my head and I was like, God is doing the thing that he did not make Abraham do. He didn't make him sacrifice his son, but he's going to take it upon himself to do that now. That blew my mind. When I was writing this out, and I promise this is true, my wife sent me a text of my youngest son at the splash pad. And he was just making a face, you know? It's like a really, really cute face. And I was just like thinking about God giving his son up for us. And it hit all kinds of emotions. It was just wearing me out. I was like, man, could I do that? I just know how wretched I am, man. I know how broken and how much of a failure I've been in my life. And I know all the things that's wrong with me. And yet God still wants to give me his goodness. I mean, in this moment, you can imagine the conversation. And I know it's not in the Bible and it's just something I think about. But like, if you just really let your imagination run wild for a second and you're like, Jesus is sitting there and he's like, Dad, man, I don't want to do this. And God's like, I know. It's my will though, son. And it's how we're going to show everyone how much we love them. It's how they're going to see our goodness. And it's the only way. And man, that breaks me like every time. Because I think about how prideful I am and how judgmental I am. And I think about everything in my box, everything that's in here. And I'm like, man, God. And he's like, I'm still going to give you this every single time. He's still going to choose us. See, we're under this impression that Jesus died for us. He died as us. That's a big difference. He didn't do you a favor. He took your place. He took the punishment that his Father had for us, and he just took it. You guys stand up real quick. Jesus gives the disciples an instruction at the end here when he knows he's about to be arrested. And he says, but look, the time has come. Up. Let's be going. Jesus sees where you are right now. He sees where you're at today. He knows what you're struggling with. He knows everything in your life. He knows the whole entire mess. And he's telling you today, you can lay your past down. You can lay all your preferences down, and you can lay your expectations down. You can submit all that to me, and I will take care of you. You can get up, and you can go. You don't have to carry that anymore. It's forgiven. The thing that you're fixing to do 6 weeks from now, that mistake you're gonna make, forgiven. Stop apologizing. And I'm talking to myself. I do it all the time. I said it this morning. When I'm sitting there trying to like remove everything out of my mind so God can just speak through me. And I'm like, just use me in whatever way you want to use me today. I don't care. I just want you to use me. I want to be empty when I leave this house today. I don't have anything left in the tank because I want you to use it. Next weekend is a fresh start weekend. We're going to see people come in next weekend. They're going to get baptized right here in this room. And some of you need to take that step. Some of you, it's holding you back from everything else that God's got for you. A simple little step that's just an expression of your faith. But it will be monumental for you because it will mean something in your heart that you took that step. And you'll be ready to do the next thing that God's got for you. Some of you right now need to take a step to make a fresh start in this room. You spent your whole life doing this thing, playing this game that we do every single week, where we come in and clock in and sit down and go, give me something good, God. I want to say this about that. If you don't spend time with God, alone time with God, what you get up here is leftovers. It's coming from somebody else. That bread's got mold on it. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to last you all week. It's not going to last you all week. But see, we do that. We come, I got a good word today. Well, tomorrow's Monday, and it's going to suck. It's going to happen. And you got to be prepared for that. These are moments. These are small moments. These moments can set you up for the next big thing in your life, or this moment can literally just be a waste of time like it is every week most of the time for a lot of people. I don't want that for you. God doesn't want that for you. He wants you to step into your purpose, into a calling. Because once you do that, other people's lives get changed. People around you get changed. I pray for that for my kids all the time because I want them to see their value and how good they are, not all the crap that's around that they feel like they get their identity from. Man, I pray that all the time. Like, man, I just want them to see you and I just want them to go after you because you are what changes lives. These things are just a moment, man. We're going to take the moment right now. You guys can close your eyes and we're going to pray together all at once as loud as we can.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into the message today. Hope it was meaningful to you. And if it was, be sure to subscribe to Overflow Church's YouTube page. And if you want to give into the move of God happening here at Overflow, you can do that through our website or through our app. Hope you guys have an incredible day.